I want to start by saying something, a little preliminary remark, which is that I'm very excited to be here tonight, more than excited, very proud to be here tonight, thrilled to be here tonight. As far as I was an undergraduate, my memoir talks a lot about that, my undergraduate days here, what it meant to me, what school meant to me, what my professors meant to me, how much I loved it, how much I never wanted to leave. In fact, I was so enamored that I decided to come back again and teach for 30 years at the same place. I was an undergraduate.
You wanted to start talking about your days in the Bronx, your upbringing in the Bronx, and how City College was very important to you because you didn't exactly like the Bronx very much. And I'm just going to read 2 sentences from your memoir. But soon I would mingle with fellow artists and dreamers of beauty whose devotion to art elevated them above even the prospect of a life of poverty. There was no poverty where there was beauty, and all who created beauty, rich or poor, were equal. Tell us about the Bronx and how City College saved you.
The Bronx, when I was a kid, was a wonderful place in a way. My neighborhood was wonderful. Everything was education, education, education. Everyone was grinding away to study, to get out, to be free, to have a life. It was very hard to get into City College then. It was called the proletarian Harvard. I mean, you probably know that. The working class Harvard. It was considered on a level, educational level, better even than Harvard. And it was better than Harvard in many ways. I know it's hard to believe that. It's true. Probably still is true. We had such amazing people teaching here. Great scholars, great historians, great intellectuals, really great, famous, world-renowned intellectuals teaching at City College with kindness to us and a sense of respect for us. That was paramount. We weren't treated like, poor, sort of slough-off students who had no money, just give them anything, they'll be happy to accept it. No, it was marvelous. City College was the place. And then there were lesser degrees of your acceptance. You can go to City, Hunter, Brooklyn, Lehman, and in descending order. So the highest rank is acceptance in City College. And then truly and truly, my life began. That's when my life began. There used to be a cafeteria. I don't know if it looked like a prison movie. You know those prison movies, like the 30s, 40 movies? These huge cafeterias, the convicts are there on these long tables and their corridors. That's what it was like. And then we'd sit there, and we would talk everything. Hours, politics, art, literature, everything. All our professors about reading. We were all, I can't say all of us, but my little group, we were enamored. We were enamored. So much so that I didn't really want to go to classes anymore. I really wanted to hang out and talk about books and meet my fellow students and read. I never wanted to leave. And so I didn't take my classes seriously, and after my first year, they threw me out. They said you had to keep your grades up, and I didn't know what I was thinking. I went to see the dean of academic affairs. He said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Tuten, but you're out." He saw in my face how I almost began to cry. I was so ashamed of myself and so sad that I'd have to leave the cafeteria. I thought, they won't let me back in that cafeteria again. So he saw in my face, the pain in my face and the seriousness. He said, "Well, we'll give you 6 months probation. Come back in 6 months, but when you come back, you have to get B+ or better." And I came back and I took it seriously after that. Yeah. I had professors who became my friends, lifetime friends. There were remarkable people there. This is the person I want to talk about, I want to honor. His name was Leonard Erlich. None of you have heard of him, I'm absolutely sure. He's forgotten, he's a forgotten man. Leonard Erlich taught creative writing here. Published his first book at 25. He was a national success with one book. The New York Times, which I found a passage for it in the memoir, hailed him as one of the great new young writers in America. He was already a made American legend at 25. He didn't finish his second novel. He could not finish his second novel. And in addition to his being extremely kind and sweet and warm and suspicious and paranoid, all of it, he carried with him this great weight of failure. You could see it. He had always had huge apartments. He lived alone. He didn't have a cat, didn't have anything. So one day I go to one of these fabulous apartments where he had many receptions for us, the students. He had favorite students in a few of us, and he invited us to cocktail parties where I met other writers, interesting writers of his generation. And he said, "I want to show you something." He goes into another room. He comes back with a box, those kinds of boxes, acid-free boxes. He opens it up, and he takes it out, and it's a huge manuscript. Look, picture it. I said, "What is this, Leonard?" He said, It's my second novel. I said, you finished it, I'm so happy. No, it's not finished. He had written the whole book except the last chapter. Think about that. The last chapter. And then he takes another box. He had a third novel, the same thing. I was too much of a kid. I was his student. I didn't have the wherewithal intellectually, emotionally to say to him, look, get someone to finish it for you, dictate it, do anything, get it done. Erlich's greatest condemnation of anyone's writing, especially, fiction, he would say, the prose has no dignity. I wrote my first novel, which was a kind of crazy, lunatic, experimental novel against everything he believed, everything. I hope it had dignity, but I made a novel of quotations. I had a linear story of the Mao Zedong march, the Long March, in fact, which I cut with parodies and quotations, and people speak long dialogue, long monologues out of books that I quoted from. I knew he would hate it. I knew it. I was afraid. I never showed it to him.
Do you want to read 3 paragraphs on Erlich that you wrote here?
I never sent Erlich my first novel after it was published in 1971. I look over my reasons and failed to find anything in our relationship, our friendship, that would justify my neglect. Erlich had always been more than kind to me, but I feared he would find that my work, my novel, a great deal of it made up of a mosaic of quotations and literary parodies, lacked what he found paramount in literature, dignity. I feared he would see in my pastiche a facile attempt to avoid the serious work of crafting sentences, each with their own music and energy and conviction. Perhaps I also had not too conscious desire to break from exactly the kind of studied writing that Erlich and my hero, Hemingway, had highly promised. Kill the father so you can be free of them. We drifted far apart, or perhaps it was I who had drifted, fearing that his aura of failure was catching, and that now I had become a published author, one novel, there'd be no second, and I would let down myself and everyone else. In my writing about him, I hope lovingly so, I seek to address and perhaps in some way to redeem my guilt for having abandoned him, he who was my friend and who had needed friends.
In your memoir, you also talk about a Professor Cohn here at City College who gave you good advice, told you not to waste time. And at the time, you were wasting a lot of time. You were drinking and hanging out in cafes, basically just talking, being a writer, and actually not getting.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah. Natasha was this extraordinary woman, and one night, Natasha and I had a big drinking thing. We go to a place that doesn't exist anymore called the Emerald. It was on Amsterdam. Was it on Amsterdam?
Yeah.
Amsterdam Avenue, the leftover Irish American bar. Natasha and I got so positively drunk out of my mind, and I suddenly wake up and I realize it's like 8 o'clock, but I have to get to Hans Cohn's class, at 9 o'clock class. I would never miss that class in the world. Hans Kohn was one of the most distinguished historians of intellectual history, period. He wrote books on nationalism. He was renowned, internationally renowned. He had a class. We would pack to his class. We'd run to his class. I get myself up. The bar had just opened. I thought, what I need is a drink before I get to class. I gotta have some fortification. And so I remember the powerfulness of it. Sitting there, looking in the mirror. I was the only person there. And there's a big bowl of hard-boiled eggs. I think that was a nickel or a dime. Drinking, looking in the mirror. I got so excited. I thought, what a life I'm having. What a great life. What a glamorous life I'm having. I'm really a writer. So I go to Hans Cohn's class. I must have been reeking of alcohol. It was so packed, this class. We had to sit in the staircase. It was an amphitheater. He said, under communism, nothing will change, he said, because human aggressivity is native. And it will never change, so that even though if you have social progress, you'll find that human aggressivity will find other channels for its aggressivity. Some other ways to grab power, other way. And I remember, and I was listening to this, and I remember thinking, And I raised my hand in kind of drunken way. I said, well, Professor Cohn, that you're speaking like it's like a Calvinism, like we're born with innate evil. I said, he said, I don't mean to suggest that, young man. I don't mean to suggest that, but if you tell me that things will be better in history, historically speaking, if you tell me things will be better, I'll tell you also that fish can fly. And that was it. Right? And people started to applaud. And I wasn't sure if they were applauding for him or for me or for what. I took it for me. I thought, my brazenness. That afternoon, Hans Kohn was sitting in the subway across from me. Aren't you that young man in my class? I said, come sit next to me. I sat next to him. And we started to talk, and he turned to me, because he knew me from what I had said that morning. And he turned to me and he said, so what do you want to be? What do you want? I said, I want to be a writer. And he said, you want to be a writer, or you're a writer? I said, I guess I'm both. What happens if you have to leave the country and you have to cross the border? That's a European occupation, a preoccupation of that period. Because Walter Benjamin, he was crossing the pyramids and he got stopped by the police and he committed suicide. He couldn't get into Spain, and the Nazis were after him. So it was a preoccupation of a generation. How do you get out? What would you take with you? He said. I said, I don't know. I guess I'd take my typewriter. Don't be ridiculous. They'll take your typewriter away from you. Cash. The guards will take the cash. The border guards will take the cash. I said, gee, Professor, I don't know how I'd get out. Just in the subway ride. He looks at me and says, stamps. Stamps. He said, stamps? Yeah, you can have a little stamp like this. It's worth $100,000, $50,000. You put it in your pocket. No one knows you have a stamp. He said, will you remember that? I said, yes, Professor Cohen. I'll get some stamps.
One story is you visit this old woman. You were a social worker, so you had to go around the Bronx, precisely, and find people who really needed help. And it was this blind woman, very old, and it was her birthday.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that? That was such a wonderful story.
It's a story about, I worked in the welfare department for a year. It was a woman, a blind woman, an old Jamaican blind woman. I'll cry if I talk about it.
It's okay.
I really will cry because it still moves me so much. She had such power and dignity, blind, alone, in a place of so danger, rats in the hallway. I think the story is when I went to see her knowing it was her birthday. Because you have records, when they're born. I knew it was her birthday, and I wanted to give her a birthday present. So I asked her, what do you need? And she said, you have a very beautiful voice, Fred. Why don't you come to church and sing with us? Yeah, but that story went to 1965, is about working in the welfare department and trying to be a writer. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Thank you.
I like it. I like it.